Alright, let's dive right into this explainer. Picture this, it's a Saturday morning. Families across Texas are pouring their first cups of coffee, kids are just waking up, and 60 miles above their heads, 7 American astronauts are finally coming home. But they never made it. Today, we're taking a deeply focused look at the morning of February 1st, 2003, when the Space Shuttle Columbia broke apart during re-entry. We're going to examine not just the physical causes of this truly heartbreaking tragedy, but the invisible, systemic failures hiding behind it, and, most importantly for us today, the lasting safety lessons that literally changed human spaceflight forever.
Now, to really grasp the sheer scale of what happened, we need to look at just how incredibly fast this disaster unfolded for the flight controllers down in Houston. At 8:53 a.m., sensors in the shuttle's left wing start reporting abnormal heat. Controllers note it, but, they wait for more data. Then at 8:58 a.m., 4 hydraulic sensors in the left wheel well go offline simultaneously. One failing sensor, that's a nuisance. 4 at once, that is a massive glowing red flag. And then, at exactly 8:59 and 32 seconds, Mission Control sends a totally routine communication. Columbia doesn't respond. The telemetry feed, which is the absolute heartbeat of the shuttle, just flatlines. Flight Director Leroy Kane quietly tells his team to lock the doors and preserve all data. In less than 4 minutes, a state-of-the-art spacecraft became a trail of debris across the sky.
Part 1. Flying on borrowed time. So, to figure out the root physical cause of this tragedy, we actually have to rewind 16 days prior to the launch itself. On January 16th, exactly 82 seconds after liftoff, something went wrong. A piece of foam insulation, roughly the size of a small carry-on suitcase, broke off from the external fuel tank and struck the leading edge of the shuttle's left wing. Engineers watching the launch footage actually caught this on camera. They flagged it immediately, and they raised some very serious safety concerns. And here is where we see a truly deadly disconnect between perception and reality. NASA management, who were under immense pressure to maintain their schedule, just assumed this foam strike was routine. They'd seen it happen on previous missions, so they didn't consider it a critical issue at all. But the reality was catastrophic. That piece of foam had punched a massive 9-inch hole in the carbon composite panels protecting the left wing. Now, those panels are designed to keep out the 3,000-degree heat of re-entry. Because of that single hole, Columbia's fate was sealed, and for 16 entire days in orbit, the crew had absolutely no idea. Moving into Part 2, a failure of culture. While the physical destruction scattered pieces of the shuttle across literally 300 miles of Texas sky, the investigation had to shift its focus toward a really uncomfortable truth. In the immediate aftermath, this unprecedented search and rescue operation was launched. More than 2,000 personnel fanned out across pine forests, swamps, and fields. They recovered over 84,000 pieces of debris. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 40% of the shuttle's entire weight, carefully cataloged and studied. The sheer scale of this recovery gave the Columbia Accident Investigation Board the physical evidence they needed, but what they found, it went way, way deeper than broken composite panels.
It helps to think of the Columbia disaster kind of like a giant iceberg. The visible physical failures, the foam strike, that 9-inch hole, those were just what sat above the surface. Below the waterline was an enormous, totally invisible organizational failure. The board discovered that engineers' deep concerns about the foam had actually been suppressed and minimized. Engineers were made to feel like obstacles rather than the safety experts they were. The intense pressure to keep the whole shuttle program on schedule had quietly corrupted the very systems that were designed to keep the astronauts alive.
The investigation board, well, they absolutely did not mince words here. They explicitly wrote that this was an organizational failure, a failure of culture, a failure of the willingness to hear hard truths. The true tragedy is that the physical damage to the wing was allowed to become fatal precisely because of internal pressures that silenced the very people trying to raise the alarm.
Which brings us to Part 3, the lasting safety lessons.
The tragic loss of Columbia ended up being a massive, absolute game-changer for spaceflight protocols. NASA fundamentally overhauled its operations. First off, they implemented entirely new foam mitigation procedures on those external tanks. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, they mandated new in-orbit inspection protocols. This meant shuttles would rigorously check their own heat shields while up in space before ever attempting re-entry. No more guessing. They also developed new crew safety systems. And honestly, most importantly, they established direct, unblockable communication channels to ensure that when engineers raised a safety concern, they would be heard to the highest levels of management. Basically, they changed the culture by changing the structure.
It took over 2 years of incredibly rigorous redesigns and safety checks, but by 2005, the Space Shuttle program achieved its return to flight. These new, stringent protocols became the bedrock of every single mission that followed. They successfully and safely guided the remainder of the Space Shuttle program all the way to its final mission in 2011. The hard lessons learned from Columbia quite literally protected every astronaut who flew after them.
Finally, Part 4, What We Owe Them.
As we talk about all these safety protocols, we really have to remember the human heartbeat at the center of this story. Kalpana Chawla, one of the 7 crew members aboard Columbia, once said, "The path from dreams to success does exist. It requires vision, belief, and a whole lot of determination to get there." She and her crewmates, Rick Husband, Willie McCool, David Brown, Laurel Clark, Michael Anderson, and Elon Ramon, they were scientists, they were pilots, and they were dreamers. The sweeping systemic changes NASA made weren't just bureaucratic adjustments. They were a direct effort to honor the ambition and the spirit of these 7 individuals who gave their lives.
And that brings us to how they're remembered today. Every single year on February 1st, NASA pauses. They remember Columbia, just like they remember Challenger and Apollo 1. They pause to acknowledge a really fundamental, heavy truth. Human exploration is never free. The flatlined radio silence of Columbia at 8:59 in the morning isn't just a tragic ending. It's an enduring, continuous call for absolute vigilance in human spaceflight. It's the sound of what we owe those who take the risks that most of us are too afraid to take.
So, that leaves us with one final, pretty heavy question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Were the changes enough? Will they ever be enough? As we continue to push the boundaries of human exploration further and further into the stars, navigating that incredibly fine line between innovation and absolute safety, this question still lives in the bones of everyone involved in spaceflight today. What do you think is the true cost of reaching the stars?